I'm Lynn Patti. I am with the EESS Southeast Region Instructional Program Support, and today we wanted to share some positive behavioral strategies with you.
Hi, I'm Beverly McGuire, and I am also Instructional Program Support for the Southeast team.
I am LaToya Daise. I am Instructional Program Support for the Southeast team as well.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with some information that we hope will be helpful to you in your classrooms. So the first thing to remember is building relationships is priority number one. Our kids tend to know when they're with someone who cares about them, cares about what they think, notices what they're doing. Beverly, LaToya, do you have something to say about this?
Well, it's just always so much easier to, if you need a child to do something and you're giving them some redirection or instruction, if they know you, it's much easier for them to respond affirmatively because they know you and they know they can depend on you.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. It's important to, like what Beverly was saying, if you're going to intervene on a situation, if you have a positive relationship with the student, they will respond more in kind to what you're wanting them to do.
So to build relationships, it's really important to use proximity control and make sure to check your facial expressions, your body language, and tone of voice. I will remember one time I taught in a program at DuPont for students who had behavioral emotional disabilities, and at one point I remember saying something to a kid, and I must have had my face really scrunched up because it upset him very much, just because my face didn't really match my words. And sometimes our kids don't even listen to us. They'll just look at our faces and body language and interpret what we're saying in a totally different way that we meant it.
So Lynn, I'd like to follow up on that with being in close proximity to the student, because if I want little Susie to do something, it's not in my best interest to yell across the room, "Hey Susie, come here." You know, it's much easier if I'm closer to her and I just say, "Hey Susie," because it makes it a much better situation if you are in close proximity to that person. Nobody wants you to be, yelling, "Hey, come here." And I think sometimes we see that in the play yard where instead of walking up to the kids, an adult is more apt to yell for them to come over here.
Mm-hmm. And it could embarrass the child too if you're yelling at them across the room or raising your voice to them across the room. And you have more instructional control when you're closer to them. Okay?
I agree. You can put yourself in a situation with a power struggle if they are resistant, if you're yelling at them across the room to come and do something, giving them a demand or a request to come here, and then they may resist. Now you're in a power struggle in front of the entire classroom.
Mm-hmm. That's a really excellent point, LaToya.
Yes. Also, I've seen students be instructed to go flip their card or move their clothespin, and where the teacher stays in one place, ask the student to get up and go do that. And that allows for a lot of the kid having the opportunity to show their anger. That's really not the best way to redirect a student when their behavior is not where you want it to be.
So I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying, Lynn, that the child is misbehaving or acting not as appropriate as you want them to do, or they're not following a routine, and you tell them already at that point, move your card, but they're already semi-heightened, so that will just exacerbate the situation.
Exactly.
So when we start to build a relationship, one thing that you can do is to ask an open-ended question, not a question that's going to just have a yes or no answer. So we want to ask a question to understand. And those questions would be what, who, where, or when. And then to make an empathy statement at the same time, or you can do it the empathy statement first and the open-ended question second, or either way you can do it. But, oh, it looks like you're sad. Oh, you're happy. You're angry. And so I'm going to walk into a classroom, and I'm a child. I'm a second grader, let's say, and I have tears that, are old. I have old tears. My eyes are all red, and I'm sniffing. And I walk into the classroom, and the teacher says to me,
Beverly, you seem really upset. What's going on?
I am upset. I'm so sad I can't tell you. I'm just so sad this morning because before I left for school, my dog got hit by a car.
Oh, you must be so devastated.
I am. I don't know what's going to happen. I'll find out when I get home tonight.
Mm-hmm. Was the dog still alive?
He was alive because my mother was bringing him to the vet when I was leaving for school, but she couldn't take me with her because I couldn't miss school.
Mm-hmm. Well, it must be hard for you to be here and thinking about school when you're worried about your puppy dog.
I am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You may also use these statements when a student is happy. So if I'm coming into the classroom, I have a big smile on my face, and I walk in and I'm bouncing, and I'm like, hey, I just got an A on my test.
You got an A, LaToya. What subject was it in?
It was in math.
You must be so excited.
I am so excited because math is very hard for me.
That is great.
And I am a student. I'm coming to school. My head is down. My eyes are down. I walk into the door, walk into the classroom, and put my head down on my hands.
Lynn, you seem very sad. Do you want to talk about it?
I am really sad.
What happened?
Well, that boy, every day when I walk to the classroom, when I walk by his class, he says, "There's that fatty."
Oh, that must really hurt your feelings.
It did hurt my feelings. It did. So you can go on and on with the open-ended questions and the empathy statements. And even if you did say, "You seem really sad," and the student says, "No, I'm not sad, I'm mad," you kind of clarify how they're feeling.
And I do have to say one thing. I talked over LaToya, and when you're building relationships and asking open-ended questions and making empathy statements, you don't usually talk over the person. So just to clarify that.
Also, it's really sometimes for teachers, for adults, for us, we want to kind of solve the students' problems at this point. So be very careful about not trying to solve their problems, but just to hear them out. So I even do that with my adult children now. They'll tell me something's going on, and I'll say, "Well, what can I do to help? Do you need this? Do you need that?" And sometimes I just need to slow down and hear them out, and that's really all they need.
Strategy, and that's when you talk to a student for 2 minutes for 10 school days, 10 consistent school days, about something that they're interested in. It does not have to be related to school at all. So that's a good way to really work on building a relationship in a short period of time.
So LaToya, is it okay to talk about, can I direct it, or should the student direct it, or how does that work?
Well, the student would direct the conversation. We just want to make sure that we focus on, as well as and I forgot to mention this, on what the student is talking about, the content and not the delivery. But to initially start it, you may just want to, kind of engage with the student a little bit and then go from there and have the student kind of initiate it, or you initiate it as you all start building your relationship.
And it can be something different all 10 days?
Just anything that they're interested in, and it doesn't have to relate to school, so it doesn't have to be the same topic.
noticing strategy, it's really important to pay attention to the behaviors you want to see repeated. So we want to acknowledge the students when they're exhibiting appropriate behavior. Sometimes we might feel like we're interrupting when they're doing what we want to see them doing, but it's not interrupting. So just remember, focus on the behaviors you want to see repeated. So if they sit in their seat quickly, give them a thumbs up, give them a high five, just let them know you notice what they're doing. Did either of you have anything else on that one?
Many times we're focused on what they're not doing, so I think this takes a little bit of time to get accustomed to. And then the last thing we have is the bucket strategy, and we need to fill the students' buckets daily with at least 4 positives to 1 negative or redirect, because I can be saying all day long, sit down, stand up, stop talking, raise your hand. Use a bucket, and there's nothing. If the bucket is empty, you can't get anything from it. So you really need to try to focus on something. Oh, and as we talked about with the previous strategy, the noticing strategy, you have to work on it. But oh, thanks for sitting. I like the way you sharpened your pencil, or something like that, so that you're giving them at least 4 positives to each negative or redirection that you give the student. And I know Lynn and I and LaToya talked about this previously, but if it's really somebody that you find difficult, you may have to just stop by, just noticing something about them, and just maybe something small to begin with, and then you need to build that up. Guys, do you have anything else to say about that?
I think the 4 positives to 1 negative redirect does not come naturally. Even with my own grandkids, I'll notice, like, if it's a difficult day, if I have 3 of them together and maybe they're arguing, or it's very our regular human behavior. It's more easy for us to notice what's going wrong than what's going right. So it's being mindful about what they're doing in the positive ways, and making sure that we're noticing that and telling them what they're doing is good, appropriate.
You just said something that made me think, because I guess we always expect accurate and appropriate behavior, and so we don't reinforce it as much as we should, because it's like we think, well, they should know that, or they should be doing that anyway. But it's good to get recognized for it. It
is, and it doesn't have to be perfect behavior either. It can be building towards what we want them to do. Like even if they're not working, if they just go ahead and sit in their seat, we can praise them for sitting in their seat and build on that.
And I also want to add to, when you said it doesn't come naturally as much, so you can monitor what you're doing, that you are giving those 4 positive to 1 corrective. You may want to use like paper clips and move them from one hand to another, or wear rubber bands around your wrists and then move it from one hand to the other, or one wrist to the other, just so that you're monitoring your positive to negative ratio.
Would you have one of those for each kid in the class, LaToya? Or do you think there are just certain kids that you might need to do that with?
With certain kids, some of our more challenging kiddos,
okay,
that we're typically focusing on some of the negative, or the correctives we're trying to correct. So for those kiddos, I would be mindful of that and maybe use that strategy.
I like that. I like the paperclip strategy.
It's a good idea. So we have a couple of videos here that just show one good way to build relationships with students. It gives each student just a little bit of eyeball time with that teacher at the beginning of the day. One's for younger kids, one is for older kids. and then one for the older students. This is, what I love about these is just I love to see the students' faces. The resources that we brought to you today come from the book The Power of Positive Parenting by Glenn Latham.